Do you think that you being catapulted now in the public eye in the way that you have, would it make it difficult to fuck, 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 fuck?
I found a book in my house when I was a kid. We weren't big readers. We weren't a bookish household. But there was a few books. I remember there was a big Picasso book that was always in its protective plastic bag, sort of double wrapped in that, and to be looked after. It was a gift from my mum to my dad. I never saw him reading it, but it was always there, looked after. It was a bit like those people that leave, excuse me, that leave the plastic coating on their sofa for months after they first get it, so that that it protects their sofa, keeps it clean. For what ends, I do not know. It makes no sense, but nonetheless, it had a bit of that about it. But this book I found, it was called Martial Arts, A4, hardback, glossy, desirable. I loved it. This was, one of those books that I would just read and read and read. Same, but different. The man on the cover was a Japanese martial artist called Tatsuo Suzuki, who was part of the Wado-Ryu school of karate. And he taught my father. And I used to do karate with my dad. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Not a class. When I was very young, I used to come up into town and do classes. But just at home, just me and him in the tiny little front room, in our horse stance. Wado-Ryu is a horse stance. Feet parallel, about twice shoulder width. Really dangerous, especially for your buttocks. But we'd both be there. And I remember even as a child questioning him. I mean, I was sold. The 70s was an incredible time when information, the tips of many icebergs were beginning to be felt around the world. There was invitations to things. And I'd had the Bruce Lee films. I'd seen The Big Boss. I'd seen Fist of Fury. I believed in a way of fighting that gave you total power. When you're about 7 or 8 and are scared, that's quite tempting. That's quite seductive. So to combine this dream of self-protection and the protection of others, to combine that with spending time with your father, was quite magical. Taking me through punches and blocks and I said to him, I can't remember the exact words, obviously, but I was sort of questioning, but hang on, what if they just done this? Basically, this doesn't look like it's going to save me the next time old Darren Smith decides to stick an elbow in my spine at the end of English. And my dad said, again, I can't remember exactly, but it was something along the lines of, it's about not fighting, which I didn't understand. My Zen wasn't too hot in 79, but it tapped into the aura that martial arts brought with it then. I mean, this is pre-UFC, pre-MMA. It hadn't been almost totally discredited as a fighting system. All of them. I mean, all the martial arts. Kung Fu, Karate, Aikido, Judo. I mean, Judo and Jiu-Jitsu refound their place as what is commonly known as the ground game. But all, the rest of it, it's not real. It doesn't work like that. You can't take on 4 blokes. But when I was given this sort of validation from my father that it's about not fighting, or the not fighting, to this day, maybe he just meant it's not about fighting. It's just about discipline and peace and all the things that actually I really still respect about the martial arts and sort of discover and investigate somewhat through yoga. Just discipline, just having a relationship with your body and mind that in other forms of life you certainly neglect or don't have space or time for. And most of you who are familiar with my channel and my life, I've damaged myself. I put my body through it. I haven't been kind to my body. And I do yoga 3 or 4 times a week, and it's an hour here and there where I'll let myself be kind to my body. I'll let myself like my body. I can hear all the men. We have difficulty. I have difficulty with that sort of thing. So to be able to say, right, I'm doing it, and weirdly, it's like creative projects, like a piece. If I go into a piece of writing or even make a video, it's starting. It's that, there's the feeling, there's a block. Once I've actually overcome the start and I'll get into the flow, whether it's comedy, a piece of writing, of making a video, yoga. Once I got over that initial block, it's an absolute pleasure, and I wonder why I do anything else. That's especially true with writing. Once I finally get to sit down and work on my novel, I'll do 4 or 5 hours, and I don't care about anything else because it doesn't exist in that time. It's just about me, the memories, the story, and the telling of that. So for my father to sort of give that link to it, it was amazing. Like, I didn't know where it come from. I didn't know what the Orient was. I knew they looked different. I mean, in Dartford 1979, I can think of, there's a handful of Indian kids, Kuldip again, Uji as known as, Kuldip's brother Barraj, Nikki, Jagtar, sort of sprinkling of Hindu kids. And a Vietnamese couple with their kids, Bibi Jown, I think their surname was, probably anglicised, probably originally something like Bibi Jown. But not a lot. It wasn't. They stood out. Those Orientals stood out, and I didn't know what it was. It was just this, and this stuff is plugged in these books. The myth of it, selling the mysticism of the East to the West has been a 100-year project, and this stuff is strong. I turn these beautiful, thick, heavy gloss pages, and the next photo would be, one of those sort of pagodas and at the bottom of a mountain in Japan, and just in the distance there'd be a shadow of someone sort of like balancing on one leg in places that were so far away they might as well have been another galaxy, emotionally as well as geographically. And you'd heard of things like chi and focusing energy and all those little quotes in the films where Bruce Lee would just turn to someone and go, "Don't look at the finger or you'll miss all the heavenly beauty," which is some leap to make from punching people in the face. That would seem to be the attraction of kicking and punching and elbowing and spinning round and knocking them out. Wow! And then suddenly you're sort of talking about missing heavenly beauty. And Zen and the not fighting. 20 years later, a kickboxing instructor said to me, "Your legs are your best weapons." I was like, "Oh yeah, no, that mine fly with my flexibility in yoga. Yeah, I'm with you." He went, "Nah, run away. You're not a fighter." Yeah, thank you, sensei. But this. Inside it was black and white, and that's key because that kind of died out, and it gave it added to its sort of esoteric oddness, its strangitude. And there was I remember we come uptown once to central London, I don't know what, to buy something obscure when you have to go to, my dad was doing one of those weird sort of looking around town, and I was in some shop, can't remember what it was, and there was a flick book. Do you remember the flicker books? Like a book with a repeated image that when you flick through it, animated. And it was karate, and I remember I absolutely loved it. I wasn't a thief, age 9, or 7 or whatever it was, but I did contemplate stealing it so badly. I held on to it for loads. We didn't ask our parents for stuff that we knew we weren't going to get. Out of the blue, to expect them to cough out a £5 or whatever it was out of the question. I wouldn't have gone, "Can you buy me that?" Wasn't how it worked. But I held it and really let them know but no, it didn't go. It got put back. But it was magical. And then training with my dad, absolutely magical. My dad done national service, but as far as I was concerned, he was a soldier. He wasn't legally obliged to go and join the army. but he was a soldier. You know, I really like that. There was just a handful of photographs, 4 or 5. They climbed a mountain. What's that mountain? They went to Kenya. He went skiing in Borneo. Kilimanjaro. That's it. My dad climbed Kilimanjaro. Was very happy about it. Obscure little details. That's what I got from the book. Tatsuo Suzuki, The Man on the Pagoda. These odd references, beautiful Japanese writing. That, you know, these are just graphics to me. There's no interpretation of words here. This isn't an alphabet. Our fireplace in my mum and dad's house, you know, it's only a little 2 up, 2 down, but the fireplace, my dad had like artexed it, and there was Japanese characters and like a Japanese sort of view. It's kind of strange. But just these little indicators, put that with the flick book, the not fighting, the chi. You start building up this sort of mythology, a powerful mythology, which add to that the father. And the father teaching the child, teaching him fighting, teaching him strength, power, control, teaching him how to be a man. And knowing that as a kid, naturally knowing it, not in those terms, I wouldn't have been able to describe it like that. It was just bliss. His time in the army, again, like I focused on it, and of course you seek to surpass, and I was obsessed with the idea of the special forces. Why wouldn't you be? You know, my thing has always been, to my detriment, if you're going to do something, be the best. And as I say it, I hear my dad's voice. If you're not going to be the best, there's no point doing it. Bad advice. Bad advice. But for me then, if you're going to be a soldier, be a special soldier. Why wouldn't you? Why would you opt to be one amongst many when you can be special and elevated? It's interesting as an adult. The reason I enjoy the football so much is because I've become a face in the crowd with a red and white scarf, shouting the same song as everyone else. You know, I'm not on stage. When I used to do stand-up, I'd be on stage. It's a Saturday night, and I'd be fully aware that one person in that room was doing something else. You know, 100 people were having a few drinks out with their mates watching some bloke. That was me on the stage there. Socially, I struggle to be moderate. I struggle to be middle of the road. I not so much anymore because I've worked on it, but hideously, painfully, I can recollect times, certainly at art colleges, where I'm either absolutely dominating, holding court, a performance, essentially, or silence to the point of almost taking over because people are like, what's up? You all right? And so to indulge in those sort of one of the numbers like the football is really important to me. But back then that was going to be a special forces, you know. And there was a magazine that came out in the early 80s, I think on the back of the military sort of, what would you call it, glamorization that came off the back of the Falklands War crisis. I don't know what it was really, but and when Margaret Thatcher sent our boys or her boys, something ugly and hideous, but you know, extremely powerful, to do the Iranian embassy siege, which was broadcast live on television, and these men of the shadows, these special forces, these weird, strange creatures that have risen above the ranks of your general cannon fodder, these sort of men with ninja-like capabilities that can climb up walls and disappear through drain pipes and God knows what else. They were there coming abseiling down, all in black, bang, what's going on, bang, bang, 5 minutes, it's all over, wow. So on the back of all that, this magazine was released called The Elite. And I think it might have been the first edition. The man on the cover was cut into 4, and it was like a special forces op with like a black hood on, and then this quarter was a paras, and this, you know, I'd done an oil painting of it. An oil painting covering a soldier from the front of a magazine. I think that quartered thing was actually inside the magazine. Telling the stories in there, like they told in the Iranian embassy siege, there's one bit where they say they took the plaster off of one wall, took all the brickworks off, so that it was just left plaster. And at the moment they came in through the front window with their flash grenades, their German-made Heckler and Koch automatic weapons, and it was all, you know, they could just jump through the wall, you know, through plasterboard. It was quite sad later on in life to find out what really happened, and If you watch the footage, one of those blokes comes down his abseil and gets caught up in it. The bomb goes off. He nearly gets burned to death. He's hanging up upside down. That was just going into the building. They fucked it up. You had one job, SAS. And, you know, they do not fuck about. Once in there, I think each terrorist got about 30 bullets. Next. They've done pretty well, though. I mean, look into it. Incredible, incredible. I think they killed all of them and they lost no one. So, you know, the Trevor Locke, weirdly, the copper, I think he got killed, but that was before the when they went in, and they saved all the hostages. I think maybe one of them got shot or killed. But yeah, he got caught up in his wire and nearly died. And also, I heard in one of the interviews, he said he got dead man's trigger, which is where you got a gun at a bloke with a gun and you pull it and no, it ain't happening. Oh gosh, what do you do? Luckily, he had a mate with him. But I remember letting my dad know because I wanted to impress him. I wanted him to think I was good at things. I wanted him to love me. And so I remember sort of, you know, I'm going to be in the special forces. Yeah, I'm going to be in the special forces. This weird little thin, anemic, sort of frightened, oversensitive, ADHD-ridden social misfit. Oh, yeah, I'm going to be a soldier. I'm going to be a special forces op. Yeah. And I remember he said to me, he said, nah. He said, Chris, those people are loners. Oh, that really struck me then when I used my name then as if him, and rarely did he use my name, and when he did, it really resonated. Wow. My dad died when I was 16, so it's a difficult subject. Not over emotional, it's just difficult because there's a lot going on when I try and unpack things. But he said, no, Chris, he said, Special Forces soldiers are loners, which I didn't know what a loner was, and obviously I got him to tell me. He said that's what they're like. And his boss down at the foundry, he was at that time was working as a casting bronze for you know, they're all around London in the floor, things like gas vent and all that thing, bronze relief things. He used to forge those, and he used to come home smelling of body odour, and for years I thought that's how the foundry must smell, and it's only when I got to about 13 and started sweating like an adult I was like, oh no, he just smelled. That ain't a foundry, that's men. There was a lot of sort of metal over the top. I can still smell that sort of metallic tang that was about him, but no, it was just sweat. But he said his boss down there, I can't remember his name, Morris, Ellis Reese, can't remember, one of that lot, these weird names of my childhood. He was in the SAS, and he said, you know, they're strange people. They can be on their own for a long time. And he took me to meet this bloke and talk to him. And I was talking to this bloke, and this bloke was just like, you know, to a 7-year-old dreamer who just wanted to have some wicked camouflage clothes and the glory, the silent glory of the soldier that saved the world. He was like, don't waste your life with all that. Hang on, mate, I don't want your adult bitterness. I don't want your reality. Just tell me it's brilliant. Oh, you'll be jumping out of Huey Cobra helicopters. Oh, you'll be out in mate. Don't worry about that. Down. Shit, all this time I'm still only in Dartford. Down. No, don't waste your life with it, son. Go on, go and find a nice girl. You know, one of my ex-girlfriends, Gail, the other half from the Crack Diaries. If you haven't seen it, see it. Oh, it's very good. Well, I interviewed her as well after that, but she told me once after watching a Bruce Lee film when he got trapped and he just sat down in a meditative pose and breathed. You know, she said that she'd done it. She just sort of sat on her own, but you know, wanting attention. So she sat on her own for ages. No one gave a shit. And then finally, after about 8 hours, someone went, "What are you doing?" "Nothing, just meditating." Yeah, just don't you know? So I spent a bit of time trying to be a loner, which is hard when you're trying to convince people of that. When you're trying to let your family know that you're happy alone. Hard to do that because when you're alone, they're not there to witness it. So you sort of have to be alone in public. The pathology of childhood. They didn't buy it though because I wasn't. I was intensely social, overtly social, unpleasantly social. My mum loves a story and it kind of grates with me. You talk about overshare, and my channel is just like Overshare 101 in many respects. And yet, it's not the details, it's not the extreme details of things I've done that have a sense of overshare. God, man, that's... You know, my mum says to me once, well, she says this a lot, have you noticed my changing mood? Humanity. She says that once I went up to her really strung out, about 4 years old, and she was like, what's up, what's up? You know, she said, you know, your nan and granddad are coming over. And she thought I'd be excited. And I was like, yeah, but I've got a headache, and what if I can't make them laugh? You know, that is hardwired. That I have to work against that daily. That's a strange thing for anyone to say. That's my overshare. It's just nothing to you, I'm sure, but for me, how I'm quaking. There will be regrets. So there was these odd signposts around the East, and the mysticism and the otherness, something unknown and seductive. Moving on a few years later, home computing comes to Planet Dangerfield, and we get a ZX Spectrum 16K. Not MB, not GB, K. 16 of them. That's like a handful of bytes. And wow, did they rinse that. But in the early days, the games were so bad. And to get more games, you typed in the basic code. Yeah, it became a family do. I mean, this is the 80s to me. You know, your yuppies and your red Ferraris and that. Well, it's also working class families sitting around a ZX Spectrum typing in code they don't understand. There was a magazine. This is before your Crash. This is before your Sinclair User. This is before your PC Weekly and all that other stuff. This was a magazine called Interface, knocked out on a Gestetner. Shushum, shushum, shushum. You know, you need precision for code when you're reading it to type it in. Shushum, 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 pumping it out in like faded purple. Stapled together. That was the zine. Interface. And I didn't know where it came from. It had a similar kind of resonance as the martial arts stuff. I didn't know what the Orient was. I didn't know what this insane, not the object being insane, but the space, the difference, having a madness about it. And it was the same with this. Where did Interface come from? Who made this? Who works this out? How do these people know about programming this stuff in? Where? I haven't been taught this at school. Where does this come from? It's fascinating to me. And typing in BASIC, what's that? What BASIC? It's a computing language for idiots. It's called BASIC, Beginners All System Instruction Code, I think it stands for. And it's kind of simple. It's no Fortran. It's no C. Although again, all of those, this all came with it. These computing languages that are sort of these, again, little signposts of worlds I didn't understand, little glimpses in. If A equals B, then let C equal D. 20. Go sub, one word. Go to subroutine. Go sub 210. That's line 210. And there'd be a subroutine at the end of which it would say return to go sub. Yeah, what? And I learnt that afterwards, by the way. So my dad didn't really get involved in this, but me, my mum and brother. My mum could touch type, not on that little rubber keyboard, but she was faster than me and my brother. Pages and pages and pages. I'm talking 5 or 6 pages of text that meant nothing to us. 10. Oh, here's a good one. There was one thing called Inkey, I-N-K-E-Y, followed by like a $sign, but with just the one line down it, not 2. Just check that. Or 2. Okay. It was slightly different from a $sign, but it was so similar, that's what we referred to it as. So my mum would be sitting there typing, my brother would be reading it, and they'd be like, if Inkey $sign equals A plus 1, then go to plus whatever. Next line, if Inkey $sign, and once out of the blue, for very little major reason, but you'll see where I'm going and why I went there. I went, it's not a dollar sign. And like, my brother, you know, it was an endless competition for knowledge. Not knowing it, but just showing it. Having it above the other. And he sort of looked at me, immediately threatened. What is it then? And I said, as my mum's looked at me, innocent, lovely mum, what is it then? I went, Sajos. It means Sajos. Now, weirdly, I mean, as a kid, it's like magic when you can have these kind of effects. You know, Arthur C. Clarke says any suitably advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Well, it's much the same with language, really. They were like, oh, right, okay. And then from then on, and this is like a year, and a year in a child's life is a decade in an adult's life. And they'd be there, reading out. If Inky Sajos, I'd be just thinking, this is brilliant. Got them every time. Never let on to it either. I told him a couple of Christmases ago when my brother come back from Japan, and they didn't even remember it. But I knew. And of course, these programs didn't work because there'd be bugs in their writing of it, the printing of it, and your typing of it. You could be debugging for another day. When it finally went through, and you pressed run, and it went. The worst music, the worst sound chip. That sounds a bit grandiose. Whatever that Z80 was pumping out. Beep beep, beep beep. That's better than it was. It's impossible to be as bad as the Spectrum sound using my voice, but you know. And then you'd get this game, and it'd be like a plus sign. A plus sign being chased by a bracket. And if you had to press space. And you only had one chance to press it. And if you pressed it at the right time, it went beep, beep. And you'd get 10 points if you managed to get it. But in the magazine, though, the illustration would be like a spaceship with all this sort of smoke coming out the back, and the pilot reaching out the window with a gun to shoot an alien off of his spaceship bonnet. And it would be called something like, I don't know, Spazoids. And you'd be thinking, oh, this is going to be it. Beep, 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 beep. But again, wondering where it all came from, wondering where those games came from. Things developed, of course. I mean, it went up to 48k. We had to send our computer off. Oh, I was without it for a couple of weeks. It was turmoil. And then when it came back, this new 48k, we loaded up Elite. Elite is a space game. Huge in terms of scale. Vector graphics, white lines, black background. And me and my friend Mark, still friends with today, really good friend, an amazing man, stood with me so much. I think I've mentioned this before. Me and my girlfriend, the same one I mentioned once, during the midst of our hideous addiction, when it was at its worst, we've gone round there to ponce some anything, and they had nothing themselves, and they gave us a cabbage and a potato, and we went home and I had a bit of gravy powder, and we had cabbage, potato and gravy. We hadn't eaten for days, and it was still to this day, me and Gail will say, the best meal we ever had. Oh, it's all relative. We were fucking starving, and it was like, oh man. But me and him used to play Elite, and in Elite you do two things. There's combat, fighting other ships, and there's trading, like when you land, when you dock, you can buy things and you can sell them. You can stay legal, you can buy illegal stuff, make a bit more money, but the police will chase you. Or you can be a pirate, you can smash into other ships and get a scoop and nick their stuff and all this sort of stuff. To be honest with you, the trading was minor. There was hardly anything to do. The most of it was the firing and shooting, which Mark done. I could never steer the fucking thing. But we'd play that game all day long, every day we could for the whole of the summer holidays. And it was just being with my friend that I liked. We were connecting. We were both doing something we loved. We were enjoying it, and we were together. And it was just bliss. You know, I was crazy sensitive around that time with friends. I had another friend, Michael Brown. He came to one of my last gigs a couple of years ago. Lovely to see him. But there was a mod revival in the early 80s, and me and him at like 12 years old had our mod parkas down to our ankles, our little button-down shirts and ties, Louis, all this, going to parties with these adults. Oh, it was amazing. Those little Mary Quant girls with the bobs and the dog-tooth miniskirts giving us little cheeky kisses and shit, man. And they'll be, oh, you're so cute, and your park will be like, oh yeah, I've got an erection. And I remember once he said to me at school, he went, I'm not going to be a mod anymore. Oh, I was devastated. I remember ringing him up, like the old landlines in those days. I rang him up after school, going, but what? He went, I just want to be a casual. You know, the casuals, the football hooliganism, the stolen Elise sportswear from European competitions that the Scousers were bringing back by the stolen barrel load. And I was torn to pieces, crying. I was crying. He remembers it as well. I mentioned it to him at the gig. I went, you're going to be a casual tomorrow, and he laughed. But it took so it felt like something special had been taken from us, and it was a signal that me and him were, you know, breaking up, learning to deal with those kinds of things, learning to deal with separation, learning to deal with not getting what you want always out of other humans because they have their own agendas. I had a mate who lived in my hometown, and I absolutely loved him, and he moved to Chatham, a place called Walderslade, and it was a new area. You know, what was once just brown field was now these massive houses. Everyone I knew lived in either a 2 up, 2 down, or 1 up flat or something. And suddenly he had like 5 bedrooms detached in this whole close. It was all brand new. The roads were new. You could have eaten your dinner off the tarmac. And all these new friends he had there, and it just seemed like hope. Honestly, it was like the frontier to me. There was nothing old there. It was all clean, and you know, it was like I was only like 11 or 12, but like the way it worked was a load of you got together like a cooperative and bought a road, and you all chipped in. So there'd be builders, plasterers, you know, labourers, plumbers, and electricians. Everyone chipped in, and they got this property for like less than what they sold their 2 up, 2 down in Dartford for. And I went and stayed there once, and I met all the new friends, and I had a thing for one of the girls, and I was there for a few nights, and it was bliss. It was like a theme park of life, but how it should be, not what I was getting experiencing at home. And I remember the last night, I was only there for a couple of nights, the last night I was in that bed crying my eyes out. I just did not want to go. And I even knew then, I was thinking, this is a bit much. Do people cry when they leave their mates' stayovers? And I already felt like a bit of a liability. I remember thinking, you know, this isn't what people want. If he can hear me crying, it's not going to bring us together, is it? It's going to contribute to what I'm already fearing. It's kind of weird. As the sort of mass media and communications developed, I sort of witnessed what was almost like the end of obscurity. You know, will kids grow up today with a little bit of information? Will they grow up with the tip of an iceberg and be able to investigate it, be able to go and get culture rather than that passive sit there and let it come to you because, oh, it's coming. People pay millions to get their information to you. Is there an obscurity? You know, I can remember having conversations with people in the early 90s, and you'd mention something like a record or a film or, you know, any kind of cultural sort of object, and you'd have to describe it, you'd have to explain it, where it's from, what it means to you, etc., etc. The amount of time since then, there'll be a conversation going on, someone quickly gets on their phone or the computer, hey, I'll show you, there you go, oh, what, that song, yeah, no, this is it, and they'll play it to you, and the mystery is gone, the obscurity is gone. You know, there's sacrifices with technologies. There's, you know, they create change, and change isn't always an addition. It isn't always a positive. It's not always a negative either. In fact, it's neither, and it's both, of course. But I don't think it's all negative. It's not. Sorry, I don't think it's as negative as people would suggest. Because humans need certain things. They need them, and if they're removed, they'll look elsewhere and they'll find them elsewhere. And I think what happens is humans start looking for new obscurities, whether that be a cultural thing or a communicative thing or creative thing, because they need them in their lives. and what they will be and where they will be. I mean, we've travelled the globe, we've travelled history, we do this geographically and historically, temporally and spatially. We have investigated. So we tend to go inwards, not as a retreat, but as a new investigation. And I think that's what the future holds. A more profound investigation of self without self. Not an indulgence, but an exposure and a connection and an engagement and a sharing. Because humans need that stuff. They won't let it be taken away from them because it's death. And if we want to be happy occasionally, you don't want to be happy all the time. It'll kill you. And if we want to be content, and we want to be engaged, and if we want to have value and worth, and get old to the point where, yeah, I've had enough now. I've tried and I've done it. Yeah, it's time to go. That seems entirely possible to me. And not just a fear, not just a regret, not just I don't want to die, I wish I could stay alive. Yeah, but there's another side to it. What will save us as individuals as well as a society, perhaps, is that what has driven society from the beginning? Thought, creativity, truth and passion. That's your life. Make it happen.